We are still on the DJI product launch screen, and we're going to be rolling through now. Now, before we get into the main body of the presentation, we want to make this as interactive as possible. So what we want is, as we run through the sections, if you can be putting your questions to the panel, not in the chat, but if you have a look to the bottom left, you'll see something called questions, and it's opened. If you put your questions in there, when we get to natural pauses, I'll pull some of these out and we'll ask them directly to the panel. And then hopefully we'll get a lot of your questions answered as well. And without further ado, I think we should get cracking. So let's talk about the improved transmission system. Ryan, tell us about this.
So yeah, basically the M300 RTK is going to be using the brand new OcuSync Enterprise. Obviously, you'll be familiar with the OcuSync transmission system used in things such as the Mavic Enterprise and the new Mavic Air 2. But this time you're going to get 15 kilometers max transmission range. So if you compare that to, say, an Inspire 2, it's more than double the transmission range. So you can rest assured that even at long distances, you're still going to get the top quality camera feed back to your ground station.
Great. And what does that mean, Sam, for the public safety sector?
Yeah, so emergency services are already sort of exploring EV loss and BV loss, so extended and beyond visual line of sight flying. Certain missions, for example, the police require, pushing the current technology right to its very limit. So this is going to allow them to keep progressing down that path and pushing the legislation to improve as well. It also gives a level of security, not just in the encryption and that side of things, but also there's the fact that a 15-kilometer range means you're more happy with it working well at a lower range. It's like having a car that can do 200 miles an hour. You might not use it to drive 200 miles an hour, but you have a good sense of security that, it can at least get to the bare minimum and do it safely and properly.
Great. And what about you, George, for the inspection sector?
Having that transmission range also increases the strength of the connection, which is going to be a big aspect when people are flying near metallic structures, when there's large interference about. It's going to be a really good tool so you can fly safer, because at the end of the day, that's what we're really keen on obviously progressing with the drone industry is the safety aspect, and that's really going to push it forward.
Great. Anything else to add, guys, before we move on to multiple payload configurations? Great. So talk us through this, Ryan, because obviously there's a big difference here, big jump up from what the M200 can do to what we're seeing here now. Talk us through this a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, you're going to see very similar gimbal mounts. So you'll see the single downward, the dual downward, and the top gimbal, which you'll probably be familiar with for those of you who've got an M210. But the difference with the M300 is the ability to mount all three of these payloads at the same time. So that's a really, really big advancement, especially in the areas of inspection.
And what does that mean, Sam, for the public safety sector? What's your take on it? What improvements and will that bring?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Ryan pointed out there, it's the 3 times payload thing is probably more beneficial for the more commercial side than it is for the guys that I work with. So, 2 payloads is normally enough in terms of public safety. Although there is the option, if you want to add on something like maybe a spotlight, so you've got 2 sensors and then a spotlight, that could be fairly useful. Aside from that, just the fact that it has that same functionality as the Matrice 200 series to mount multiple payloads is going to really help, because there's not always time to land and switch over. Sometimes you're in the air on a job and you need to be able to rotate between thermal and visual. And before the M200 series, at least, that's not something you could do.
Yeah. And what about you, George, for the inspection sector? What does this mean?
Payloads means you've got less downtime, you've got more time in the air, and that also plays a big part with the battery life. You can obviously capture more data from a single point, so it's more reliable. It's from a single source. So you've got less flights, less time on site, and more time to actually process the data and present that to your customer.
Great. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause. We've got a lot of questions coming up, so we'll just pause here and then I'll fire out some of these. So I'm just looking down now. We have a question from a Lauren Deverge. Hopefully I've pronounced your name okay. But his question is, can this be used for mapping? And if so, with what payload and which RTK integration? Nice easy one for you guys to start off with. Is that one for you, Ryan?
In terms of mapping, on the new smart control, you will have the ability to create mapping waypoints. So you'll be able to send the drone on a waypoint flight. This is going to be considerably more advanced than the one that was used on the M210 and the obviously M210 RTK. And it is also compatible with the base station for the M210 RTK and the Phantom 4 RTK. So you're going to have quite a bit of flexibility on that side.
I think one of the main points that sticks out to myself is
Great. Anybody
Phantom
else?
4 RTK.
Yep.
So there's still going to be applications, but for other drones, it's just going to give another solution and another way of doing things. Yeah. Okay now. Yeah, so it's not going to take away, it's not taking over, it's going to be a complement to the M210 RTK and Phantom 4 RTK. So it's still going to be room for those drones to thrive in the industry. It's just giving another way of doing things with new cameras, new payloads, which we're really excited about.
Brilliant. And one more question, and it's from Stephen Green. This one's for you, Sam. I think he says, interested to know your experience with the emergency services. He works for the UK Fire Service, and they don't see the need for BVLOS as you increase risk without increasing benefit. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends entirely on the circumstances. So when we talk about BVLOS and EVLOS, it's always going to be within the realms of is it necessary and is it safe? As far as I'm aware, at the moment they're being used sort of in extended permissions, mainly by police, but only with certain caveats and certain agreements from commanders further up the line. He's absolutely right that from a fire perspective, there wouldn't really be any need because their work is obviously much more static than police work tends to be.
Thanks for that, Sam. And one more question before we move on. I think this one's for you, Ryan. So it's from a Ben, and he's asking, can you use the old sensors as well, like the X4S and the X7, etc.?
I think we'll be covering this later on,
yeah.
But the older sensors that are compatible with this unit are going to be the Z30 and the XT2.
Brilliant. And like I say, we will be covering that later on. So let's move on. Keep your questions coming in. And if you can, I see a lot of questions coming in the chat section, but if you can put them into the question section on the bottom left, we'll be able to answer them a lot there. We'll be able to see them a lot easier as well. Hopefully you're all hearing us okay and the presentation and the webinar is coming through okay. If not, very quick fixes to refresh the Google Chrome browser and that should fix it, hopefully. Right, let's move on. So, smart inspection. So, over to you, Ryan. What can you tell us about this? Just quick overview.
Okay, so I mean, the M300 RTK has got a lot of advanced features, which, to be honest, are things that we've never seen before. So, like the live mission recording, the AI spot check, and the Waypoints 2.0 was obviously what I was discussing earlier regarding setting the drone on a preset route. Now, the AI spot check basically means that it'll recognize a subject of interest. So that will, in subsequent flights, the drone will remember that point of interest to ensure that you've got consistent framing of those images. So if you're surveying a site multiple times, you'll be looking at images that effectively look identical.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Just a quick one before we move on to Sam and George. A lot of people are asking about the price and where you can purchase it from. Obviously, you can purchase it through Coptrz as well as the full 360 solution. And we will be talking pricing at the end. So if you just hold fire, we will give you all the juicy details. Right, guys, straight back at you. So what I'll do is let's just move on to some of the other smart features, and then we'll pick it up on what they all mean for the different sectors. So Ryan, do you just want to carry on and just tell us about the smart pin and track?
It's something that you'll have seen before on the Inspire. So it was called the active track, but it's a lot more intuitive now. So it probably is relevant for SAM's emergency services. It'll allow you to identify and follow people and vehicles while basically on a high level of zoom while continuously staying on the target.
Brilliant. And then just lastly, the aviation grade situational awareness features.
Yes, so you'll see when you, if you can see from that image, it's a lot more aviation based, the primary flight display. So it'll give you a lot more information on which areas are within the sensor's capability. So this is the 6 directional obstacle sensing, and it will also give you information on where each payload is facing relative to the aircraft's trajectory.
And this is great. I mean, there's a lot of smart features there. What does this mean for the inspection industry, George? What benefits
so
will all
the
these
speed of
different
inspection.
features
So if
bring?
you can preload an autonomous flight and then go back to that single site every 2, 3, 4 weeks, however many times you've got to do a maintenance check, you can literally set that drone off onto a single flight. It'll go to a point in the air and it'll zoom in onto your pylon, your turbine, any sort of part of the building that you're actually inspecting. You can get that really reliable data. So when you're presenting it to your customers, you're presenting it to managers, bosses, whoever you're looking to do, presenting presentations, you can get a photo by photo time lapse basically, which is going to give you really good indication of any wear and tear and do any maintenance checks that need to be done.
Thanks, George. Sam, what does it mean for the public safety sector?
Yeah, so starting with the obviously the smart inspection software isn't maybe quite as relevant for public safety, but on stuff like the pin and track, it's pretty easy to see where the benefits are going to be. Tracking a target, being able to relay that information accurately to people on the ground is really helpful. So you're not just being told where someone is relative to the drone, but you're getting specific details, actual coordinates on where they are. So pairing this up with something like Flight Hub that does all the sort of data collection, it actually makes it worthwhile to get Flight Hub probably for the first time. These two tie together really well. So having sort of data collection softwares that work with stuff like the pin and track, there's going to be loads of benefits to that. And then just on the situational awareness, what I'd say is for most applications, the drone is pretty much the only focus. So in anything someone in the inspection world, for example, is doing, they're going to be concentrating on the drone all the time. Obviously, within emergency services, there's a lot of distractions, whether it's getting a command told to you or whether it's something happening actually there on site that you need to act with immediately. There's loads of distractions, so having stuff that helps the drone effectively control itself when you're distracted is massively helpful. And the optical map as well, that's again something similar. If you've got flight data there that doesn't really need interpretation, you can just concentrate on the job in hand, safe in the knowledge the drone is going to hold itself sort of in place and be safe even if you're sort of pulled away to a different thing.
Thanks, Sam. Just picking up on some of the chat and some of the questions, we will be covering flight time and impact of different payloads on that flight time in a short while, so I won't answer that yet. I'll leave that to Ryan to answer as we get to it. So just in terms of, let's pick up some more questions from the people in the webinar. So I'm just going to pull some out, guys, and I will pop them to you. So I think this is a really quick one. It's from Frank Thomas. He's asking, do the legs fold back?
Retractable landing gear. It's very similar mechanism to the M210.
Brilliant. And here we go. A question from Dan Dale. Is this specific for the smart controller, or can you use iPad/Android? And if so, will they allow missions with iOS, please? Very polite question. ask it from Dan Dale.
At the moment, as far as I'm aware, it will just be for use with a smart controller because that's specifically designed for the aircraft. But I know most of DJI's platforms are generally Android-based anyway. But I think it's worth keeping an eye out for an iOS release at some point in the near future.
Thanks, Ryan. And then one last question before we move on from Scott Lark. And he's asking regarding BVLS, do you see gains in the offshore wind industry to be had?
Yeah, I think the way that the market's going and the way that the industry is obviously adapting the use of drones, I think the M210 was a really good starter platform. Obviously, you've got other manufacturers doing well in the offshore game. But what the 300s, especially with the AI that it's now coming out with, the cameras, which we'll go into more detail very soon, especially with the thermal and the zoom, it's going to be a really good progression, and it's really going to be beneficial to a lot of industry.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Right, let's move on. So just some more of the cool smart features and features of the whole solution. Ryan, what can you tell us about the advanced dual control?
Obviously, as with many DJI aircraft, it's dual control, but each operator can take control of either the aircraft or a payload relatively simple if they need to focus in on something within their area. They also are going to be offering a kind of training flight feature. So you'll be able to have a training remote controller. So very similar to how you would with, say, learning to drive a car where you have dual controls. You'd have a trainer and a trainee controller.
Brilliant. And what we'll do is we'll just move through some of these other features as well, because I know people are dying to get to the payloads, flight times, pricing, specialist training, all these cool questions.
So I think for the first,
just what can you tell us about this new powerful vision
system? So it's giving you the best possible protection that you can have for your aircraft. And the left, right, forward and back vision sensors have a detection range of up to 40 meters. So it's giving the drone plenty of time to detect obstacles.
Is there any other drone that compares with this number of sensors?
Yeah, I think we've steadily seen an increase in the detection range with all of DJI's releases. But certainly this one is basically at the maximum detection that it can be, forward, backward, both sides and top and bottom. And I think that's really as much as you could ask for. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is operating at the peak, best of the best. Great, and then obviously we have here more adaptable than ever, and there's a few things on here. Do you just want to talk through a few of these? How the IP rating, how's that different from previous models?
So what you'll see is the one for solid objects, which is the first number of 4. That generally doesn't tend to change with this type of equipment, but it's the second number, the 5, that is of most interest. Basically what that means is that the drone's going to be protected from rain or moisture coming at it from any direction. So it's going to be more protected than ever in any kind of rain conditions.
Yeah, and what's the importance of self-heating batteries? We heard a lot about this, and what's the importance of it?
So I think the main thing is when you're operating in really cold environments, historically with a lot of drones, you'd need battery heaters to get the drone batteries up to temperature before flight, which is something you needed to factor into your operation in terms of time. But obviously, if you're operating in a really cold temperature and the batteries are self-heating, you can rely that they're going to remain at the maximum power output for that mission.
Great. And then if we just move on, here's some of the accessories. Just talk through this, and then what we'll do is we'll move on to flight time. Let's get into some of the juicy stuff.
Okay, so obviously the smart controller we've kind of already covered, comes with the ultra bright 5.5 monitor. The TB60 batteries, they have increased in capacity, which is giving you that flight time of 55 minutes maximum. And you also, with the combo kit, you'll get the battery station, which it will charge sequentially, but it'll allow you to leave 8 TB60 and 4 crystal sky dependence batteries in that charger at any one time, and they will just be left to charge.
Great. And is there anything else to add here before we move on to flight time from any Sam, George?
Just going back onto the sort of back to the IP rating and some of the safety features in there, that change from 43 to 45 is going to make a big difference in terms of not only public safety, but pretty much every application that's non-consumer, so anything that's more industrial as well. Because it's protected from water from any direction rather than from a certain angle, it just means that you can fly it with confidence that it doesn't really matter how poor the sort of rain conditions are, you're still going to be able to operate the drone. And we will touch on it as well, but I think the cameras with their IP44. So again, even the payloads are IP rated, and there's going to be a lot more use of the drones within public safety when normally they'd have to be grounded. You'd have to use traditional methods or not use drones at all. So that's going to be massively helpful.
And George, anything to add from your side?
Self-heating batteries have been a real game changer. Gone are the days where you have to heat your batteries under your armpits. It's one of those where, especially with emergency services, as Sam will tell you, you're quick onto the ground, you're quick out, and if it's whatever conditions, whatever environment you're in, you've got a reliable system now.
Thanks for that, George. I've just had a mental image of you standing there with batteries under your armpits. So what I'm going to do is I was going to go down and ask some more questions from the audience, but they're actually questions that are about to be answered over the next few minutes of this webinar. So if we crack on, then I'll do questions at the end of the next section. So let's move on to flight time. Ryan, talk us through this. So
so obviously with, as you see from the graph, the flight time quoted 55 minutes is the very maximum. You would be able to fly with the 960p FPV camera at that flight time, but as you'll see from the graph, obviously that does get reduced as more payloads are added, down to the 31 minutes for the max takeoff weight. Well, I think the important thing to mention here as well, though, is even with, you can see with the H20T, you're still getting above 40 minutes flight time, which is a great improvement on previous products.
What kind of improvement are we seeing?
So, I mean, you're probably talking around the 20-minute mark in terms of improvement.
That is a massive leap.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously these figures are affected by other factors such as weather conditions, but these are a really good base to give you an idea of the kind of times that you can expect.
Yeah, brilliant. So Sam, just in terms of if we were looking at this graph and so I was in the emergency services and I wanted to get this drone, what kind of payload would they, out of what you see there, what kind of payload would they have, and what kind of max flight time would they get based on different scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine the two most popular combinations would either be just the H20T on its own, which there is given at 43 minutes, or potentially the H20T, maybe something like a Spotlight as well, which I imagine will put it similar to that H20 and XTS. Weight given there of 39, 40 minutes. What you've got to bear in mind as well is obviously you don't fly it till it's at 0%. You're going to land at maybe 15, 20, 25% of battery remaining, but that's the same for all drones. So the difference really here is compared to previous systems and the fact that it can carry, I think around it's up to 2.7 kilos is the top weight, if that's right. So three payloads up to 2.7 kilos. That just means that in terms of flying in really harsh conditions, so really strong wind, where normally you'd be looking at being down to 10, 12, maybe 15-minute flight time with something like a Matrice 210, giving yourself plenty of time to land. With this, you're still going to get that good half an hour before you have to start thinking about bringing it down. And obviously the benefits there are if you're on something like a search and rescue mission and it's literally life or death, you can spend longer in the air and less time grounded.
Thanks, Sam. And same question to you, George, for the industry sector. What kind of what would they be looking at flight time wise based on the payloads that you would see them using?
Well, I mean, as you can see on the graph, you're now looking H20, Z30, full combination, 30, 45 minutes, up to around that point. Compared to the M210 is fantastic. I mean, it gives you that reliability that you can get up, get the data, get back down, whatever conditions. But put that into real world scenario, you've now got the peace of mind that if you put the drone up, you're going to have enough time to at least collect a large amount of the data required before having to come back down and hot swap the batteries, which in the past with Inspire 1 to the M210s, it's a gradual increase in battery life, but with the new 300, it's really quite significant.
Thanks, George.
No.
Anything to add, guys, before I move on to some audience questions? Great, right, let's do it. So we've got a question, and this is for you, Sam. We've got a question from Frank Thomas. He's saying, with such a high IP rating, would the drone be suitable for use in sea search and rescue? And what is the maximum wind speed it can handle?
So yeah, I mean, sea search and rescue, that's pretty much the worst conditions. I'm sure if he's experienced in that, he'll attest to it. That's pretty much the worst conditions you can look to operate a drone in. Without it being tested in those conditions, it's really hard to say how it'll cope. That IP rating means that it's going to be, it's not going to fail due to sort of splashes coming up from underneath the drone, which historically would be a real issue when operating from sea. And some of the features like the health monitoring system are going to be massively beneficial as part of operating in those kind of environments as well, because if there is something that's going to go wrong, you're going to see it before that happens. In terms of the wind resistance, I know it is upgraded
the wind resistance is
Matrice 200,
15 meters per second.
Does have the best level of wind resistance
real
of
numbers,
any of the
that's
DJI
just
drones.
over 33 miles an hour.
I'm not sure the number there, Ryan.
Yeah.
And that was, I think it used to be about 25 miles an hour or 12 meters a second on the 200 series. So pretty big jump up. I mean, the thing with that as well is it's also going to deal better with, gusts in urban environments for emergency service use as well.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's answered. Thank you for that, Sam. Next question we've got from Keith. Sorry if I pronounced this wrong. Keith Provost. Hopefully I got that right. He's just very quick one. Is tether going to be available? Is the tether going to be available for this drone?
As of now, we've had to. I was going to say there's no indication of it being released just yet. But the likes of some of our strategic partners like Alistair, they usually release a tethered system relatively quickly after the application's been brought out. So keep your eyes peeled, and I think there may be something on the horizon at least.
Brilliant. We have a question. I will definitely pronounce this wrong, but apologies now. A question from Damir Ferhatovic. And he's asking, what do you offer for a firefighter drone team? How many batteries, controllers, and what would the setup be for firefighters, Sam? How would firefighters, if it was, what if fire service wanted this, what setup would you recommend?
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like it's going to be the H20T is going to tick all the boxes in terms of use in both fire and police. So the fact that you've got the thermal camera, which is 640 by 512 resolution, 30 hertz refresh rate, has all those smart features of the XT2, and then you've got a really high quality visual camera as well. You pair that with a long flight time and the fact that you can sit up and watch a situation for maybe 45 minutes with that camera on is going to be really helpful. So in terms of how many batteries, controls, etc., you'd want to have 2 controllers, one for the payloads, one for the pilot. Maybe a minimum of say 8 batteries, of 4 sets in total to fit well with the battery charging station. and then your various accessories, the case, etc., to carry you through. More than the hardware side, you'd also need the training in terms of how to operate the drone, how to safely maintain it, and stuff like aerial thermography to use it properly within a firefighting team. I think that's probably just as important
that obviously
as
isn't going to be used in flight. So you could be controlling that from any area.
And we have
with
a question
with
from
the huge
Andrew,
transmission range,
and he's
you've got a
asking,
lot of
has the
flexibility in terms of
controller got a
distance
good
for where the
IP
pilot
rating?
can actually be
Over
placed
to you, Ryan.
for those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. And
you could use an umbrella.
Say that again, Sam.
You could always use an umbrella.
Yeah, thanks. Certainly can.
So I don't
One last
think we've got
question
specific
before we move
sound
on
levels to hand, but I think what you have to bear in mind is that
from
we're
Peter, and a lot
comparing
of people have been
a
asking
drone
this.
of a
What
considerable
Peter's
size
asking, hi
with
there,
the Mavic,
do the
so there
propellers
is
make
going to
a
be an
lot of
increase in sound
sound
levels just purely
in
because of
comparison
the motor
to the Mavic
power
Pro 2,
required
for example,
to run the
and
drone.
also from a security point of view? What's the sound levels?
I don't think. What I would say as well, though, on that, Ryan, is that the size of the props often means that the sort of pitch of the noise is different. So I've often found that stuff like the Mavics, although the sound is quieter in terms of decibels, it almost cuts through background noise more. And sometimes the larger drones, because it's a deeper noise, if you're say 50, 60 meters away, and it's
bearing in mind
windy,
that's going to be flying the drone in
so we'll have
sport
to do some
mode.
testing and see what it comes out at. But I imagine it'll be fit for purpose for anything security based.
A unit designed specifically for speed.
Thanks,
but
Sam.
it does
One last
have
question.
that
It's from
capability
Veronica.
if you
She
do
wants
need it.
to know, what is the max speed of this drone? Right?
Yes, I mean, people who are familiar with DJI products will obviously be familiar with the standard flight modes, including sport mode. Yeah. So I mean, it's perfect if you want to get a bit carried away, but
Right, just back up a second
Yeah.
there. Did you say that this M300 has a sport mode? For this drone? Brilliant. And hit those max speeds that Veronica wants.
Exactly.
I think stuff like following vehicles on my side, that's just over 50 miles an hour. So unless you're chasing someone down a motorway, pretty much everything else, it's gonna cover that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, guys. Okay, just very quickly, we've got here purpose-built applications. Just quick overview of DJI Pilot and DJI Flight Hub, Ryan.
So I mean, probably most people now flying enterprise drones will be familiar with DJI Pilot, which is very much taken over from DJI Go 4. Obviously, with a drone of this complexity, there are going to be new features and updates that are going to need to be added to the app to obviously ensure that this is running at peak performance. But people will be generally familiar with the user interface of DJI Pilot. And DJI Flight Hub, I don't know if we'll have many users of that, but this is more for managing larger drone fleets. So you can have a central command center viewing data from multiple drones at the same time. And the M300 RTK will be compatible with Flight Hub as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Right, let's move on to payloads. So just bear with me. Here we go. Lovely shot. H is for hybrid. So Ryan, just talk us through the different payloads you can have for this drone, and let's talk about backwards compatibility as well, because we're getting a lot of questions on that, and people people are really interested in
Yeah,
that.
so in terms of backwards compatibility, you're going to still have the ability to use the Z30 and the XT2. This drone also, as with the M210, is compatible with third-party payloads through the SDK. So people who've got a Matrice 210 system and want to add this to their fleet, they're still going to have the ability to use most of their existing payloads.
Great. And is there anything on here that is worth talking about?
Yeah, I mean, all of it, to be honest. I mean, I think the H20T is revolutionary in terms of drones. We're talking about a sensor that has 4 purposes, essentially. We've got 3 cameras, which already is a massive, massive improvement. And if you add in then the laser rangefinder as well, giving you the ability to measure a distance up to 1,200 meters, we're talking about a quad sensor, effectively.
And what would this mean, Sam, for someone working in the public safety sector?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty obvious, really, looking at the stats, what it can do in my area. If you look at something like search and rescue, the fact that you've now got the ability to scan with that 12 megapixel wide camera, pick something up, tap and lock onto it, and then zoom in with the 20 megapixel zoom, or at night or in poor conditions, scan with the thermal camera and then tap across and zoom. Not only that, but then you can use the rangefinder to say there is a target, a person that's lost, or someone we're trying to find, and they are exactly 800 meters away in that direction, to then send people to go and rescue them or apprehend them based on the circumstances. Yeah, it's massively beneficial. So rather than just kind of using a drone to say there's someone in that general direction over there, the fact that you can now use it to give exact locations of targets or people is massively helpful.
Thanks, Sam. And what about you, George? What are you seeing here that'll be of particular interest to people in the industrial sectors?
It was iconic. It was really groundbreaking. But what we've got here is the hybrid, basically, of a 20 megapixel zoom camera combined with the thermal. So if you're doing any sort of inspections, you can combine the two. And if you've used the XT2 in the past, it's like having that, but with a really high-powered camera, and on top of that, a zoom function as well. And as Ryan says, having that laser rangefinder, it's a really good, solid package.
For me, this is like this sounds immense. This sounds like is there anything like this on the market in comparable? With all this tech, I don't know, but let's move on. So, because I'm very conscious of time, and I know everybody's dying to find out the price of this beast, and we're nearly there. But we'll just quickly go through this, Ryan. Just talk us through this.
We've talked about obviously the H20T being the quad sensor solution. So that's the zoom, the wide camera, the thermal, and the laser rangefinder. But if thermal isn't a priority for you, you've also got the option of the H20, which essentially is the same sensor, but it removes the thermal aspect. So you've still got the top quality zoom and the rangefinder and the standard 12 megapixel wide camera. So it gives you flexibility on payloads that are specific to your application.
Brilliant. And then I'll just move on to this one here. Can everybody see that? So a bit more detail. Anything to talk through here, Ryan?
We've covered the main aspects of it, but I think it's worth mentioning that the radiometric thermal camera is a 30 frames per second, and it's a 640 resolution camera. So anyone familiar with the XT2, effectively that is the top specification thermal that you can get. And although the zoom, the Z30 is obviously 30 times optical, this is 23 times hybrid optical, but we're talking about a zoom at 20 megapixels. So that is a massive, massive increase in quality.
I'll tell you what, I'm just going to give a shout out to Julian. He's just gone into chat to see he's already placed his order. Julian, welcome. Now, Sam, just in terms of public safety, what does this mean? in terms of, we've just heard Ryan say that this is immense, this technology. What does it mean for the public safety sector?
Yeah, I mean, aside from what we've already talked about, just looking at this this image here, you've got the accuracy of the laser rangefinder is 20 centimeters. Obviously, that's going to sort of degenerate as you go further and further out, but it means that you are going to be able to give really accurate data in terms of where someone is. So it just proves that if you combine all these sensors together into one camera, there's not really anything else you're going to need. And this is why I was saying earlier that for the public safety applications, you don't really need 3 payloads attached. You can use just this one and then get this massive flight time out of the system. And obviously, if you want to pair it with something like a spotlight or a speaker, then it's going to be able to do even more applications. So it just gives you so much more freedom having a massive amount of sensors just in one piece of equipment.
Thanks, Sam. Anything to add there, George, in terms of the inspection sector?
Right, so the Z30, yeah, you're losing, a little bit of the optical zoom, but when you look at the Z30's actual, it's only 4 megapixels. So when you actually increase the actual quality of data, people are going to be blown away when they see how good this zoom is.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to shout out some questions from the audience. We've got one from David Griffiths where he's asking about the thermal image, Ryan. He's saying, does the thermal image have zoom capability? And he's particularly interested in, would there be any loss of
zoom,
image resolution?
It'll be a digital zoom on the thermal camera. So, I mean, obviously you're not going to get as good a thermal image as you would with an optical zoom. But the thermal in this case, because it's such a high resolution camera, it's more about identifying targets, I think, especially for police search and rescue, and then using the powerful zoom to home in on a target.
Thanks, Ryan. Now, what we're going to do is we're coming into the Q&A section, but I think it is time. We will ask the questions of the panel, but I think we should answer the question that everybody's been asking throughout the presentation, and I'll direct it to you, Sam. Talk to us about the pricing.
Pricing, well, as anything, it's DJI Enterprise. It's price on application, so that means we can't reveal the pricing.
Great. Can you give ballpark figures at all?
I'll go into a bit more detail. So
yeah. Don't leave us hanging.
So it is price and application. So if you want a quotation, please do let us know, and we'll send you across a quote of the best package for your situation. In terms of some rough guidelines, a starting package, and by that I mean the drone, batteries, controllers, one of the potentially sort of, hesitate to say lower level payloads because they're all really high quality, but say the H20 rather than the H20T. You'll be spending sort of around the 10 to 12K mark. If you're looking for a really high-end package, so something with the H20T, maybe some more spare batteries, second controller, that kind of stuff, you're looking at around 20 to 25,000. So even at the top end, in terms of getting everything you need, fitting it within a budget of around 25,000 is going to be pretty achievable. Also worth mentioning that we do leasing options for businesses. We do personal and business finance options as well. So if you don't have a spare £25,000 sat around, give us a call or drop us an email anyway, because we'll be able to take a look at what we can do.
Just obviously it's price on application. In terms of, someone asked the question earlier in terms of specialist training, because obviously there's a lot of high tech here, and if we've got people who haven't adopted drones into their operations yet and haven't unlocked that potential, this might be their first foray into it. How do we just talk through what we do? How do we help these organizations to adopt the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously to operate something like this, you will need what's currently called the PFCO, which I imagine most people that are tuned into this probably have. So we provide the PFCO training to get that completed. But more to the point with this is you'll need flight coaching, and you'll need training on how to operate, maintain, set up the system, not just the drone itself, but the payloads as well. So what we do and are doing with the launch of this is a sort of handover and flight coaching session with everyone that purchases one of the new systems. And that means you'll be able to not only set the drone up, get all the firmware up to date, and get operating quicker without making any mistakes or damaging anything when you're setting up, but also get the most out of it straight away. So you're not spending the first 3 months of your operation effectively learning how to fly. That's going to be really important, because if you're spending this amount of money, you want to be able to hit the ground running and start recouping what you've spent in terms of your business costs as soon as possible.
Thanks, Sam. And would this all be hang on, Thomas Long has just asked, just quick one, can you just recap on what the potential price would be? So are we saying it will range between 10K to 25K depending on the package that you get?
Yeah, exactly. So sort of towards the sort of lower end, you're looking at around the 10K mark, and then up to 25 at the top end. But as I said, if you're looking to put a deposit down or purchase one at the moment, then you can get all your flight coaching and training and setup and handover included as part of whatever price it is that the package you go for comes out at.
I think a lot of people are really going to be pleased with the pricing structure. I know in the past, DJI have sometimes surprised people with how expensive equipment is, but you honestly are getting a lot for your money with this new system. It reminds me a lot of when the first 200 came out. I think it's going to be, a lot of people are going to be really interested.
Yeah, thanks, George. I mean, what we'll do is let's jump into some questions, because there's quite a few here, and we have overrun with the webinar, but I'm hoping you're enjoying it as much as we are, and we'll answer as many questions as we can, and then we will close down at 3 o'clock. But like the guys said, just get in touch. Our contact details are there, and we can talk through a specific application, what is the right solution for you based on your needs and requirements and how you want to use it. Right, so let's get some of these questions. So let's have a look. David Griffiths he's asking, is the H20 limited to M210 and M300, or can it also fit
no,
M600?
at the moment it is just limited to the M300 RTK. That's not to say that future developments, as came out with the Z30 and the XT2 for the M600, but as it stands at the moment, these payloads are only compatible with the M300. And also that's due to the advanced AI. The camera needs that advanced AI to be able to communicate successfully.
Thanks, Ryan. Hopefully that answers your question, David. And then we have a question from Erez. I think I pronounced that right. He's asking, is the thermal camera radiometric? Brilliant, short and sweet. Got one from Mike Hogan,
I can answer this one. So,
and he's asking,
as an example, you can use the laser rangefinder to identify a target. Let's say that's a vehicle, and then with a simple click, you can enable the camera to zoom to that specific location. So with the laser rangefinder and the camera working together in unison.
Brilliant, thank you. Just a couple of things on here. Yes, the presentation will be sent out to everybody who registered for the webinar, so you will get a copy of this. And if we don't get through all the questions that are here, we will be going through them, and we will pull together a FAQ, and we will send that out to you guys as well. So everything is covered. We don't want you to go away without having your questions answered. So quick one, just jumping back in, we've got Damir Hatovic again. And he is saying, thanks for answering my question. I've got another one. How close do you get to buildings or obstacles while flying? And regarding having optical zoom versus Mavic or Phantom. And the context behind this is
what you'll find at this distance is
looking to do more safely, there's no need for you to be
anywhere near the object that you're trying to inspect.
That's one for you, Ryan, yeah?
As an example, if you're inspecting, say, a pylon, which potentially is going to create magnetic interference, you want to be as far away as possible. So obviously we'll be putting out content with videos showing you the capabilities of the zoom, but just to put you at ease, you can be a fairly long distance away from any target that you need to inspect.
Just to give a bit of sort of a number to that, we saw some data from DJI of them using this sort of in prototype in the US, and they were able to read car registration plates from just over 500 meters away, sometimes up to about 700 meters, depending on environmental factors. So that gives you an idea in terms of what you might be able to get out of information from what range. So you can stay.
If you shoot me an email, I'll get you a quote
away and still get a
over.
good amount of data.
It's going to be quite difficult to go through all the chats, but I'll try my hardest to get everything out to you today.
Thanks, George. And I think that applies to Sam as well. We got a question here. I'm going to rattle through these really quick fire because we're coming to the end. So let's just see if we can just pop these out. So we've got a question from Steve. He's asking, does the drone have a slow mode for congested areas? That's to you, Ryan.
Could there be a beginner mode potentially? Like sometimes they have a beginner mode which will slow them down.
Okay, so I can pretty much answer this one. So the unit has dual IMUs, dual barometers, dual compass.
Question from Dan Dale.
So
what type of
basically it's got the
fail-safes does
redundancy there if
this
required.
have, i.e. losing
It can
GPS,
also
compass error,
operate
or
off of
losing a
3 propeller algorithm. So if you lose one of the propellers, it enables you to get that aircraft down to the ground safely. At the moment, perfect. No, it isn't compatible.
Quick question from,
apologies if I pronounce this wrong, just because of the complexity of the sensor, it needs to rely a lot on the drone's AI as well.
Payload compatible with the M300 RTK version 1, i.e. backward compatibility? I think we did cover this, but Ryan? Great, thanks, Ryan. Hopefully that answered the question. And we are at the end of the webinar. Guys, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure the panel want to express that as well. Really good, guys. Thank you for doing that and answering the questions. I hope everybody got what they wanted from it. Like I said, we will send a copy of the presentation out. We will answer all the questions that are in here. And just like George and Sam said, just shoot them an email and they'll get the quotes out to you. Or you can visit our website and you can put a deposit down now to order and join the number of people who've already done so. And one thing as well, Ryan will be releasing a new video series called Up in the Air, and he'll be refreshing that with content every week. So look out for that, guys. It's all part of Coptrz Academy.
Thanks,
and you know what? If you've got any questions, it doesn't stop here. We're always open. Just contact us through the website or call in. We are happy to help. So thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, George.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.